Would you be the jerk for telling a couple that you're not their charity case? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for turning my teenage niece away at the door and telling my sister to wake up because of how my niece treats my own daughter? My sister Teresa has a 16-year-old daughter, Quinn. Quinn and I used to be very close when she was younger and loved having auntie-niece time together. However, since becoming a teenager, Quinn has become very snarky and sarcastic in a mean way. I particularly don't like the way she behaves towards my own daughter Bella. She is 6. Quinn crosses the line. A particular episode of verbal cruelty at a birthday party was when I'd had enough and told Quinn, "I don't want you to come over until you can start being nice to Bella." Teresa was present when I said this. We live a short walk away from each other. A few days ago, Quinn arrived and wanted dinner, and I turned her away at the door and told her, "I don't like how you treat my daughter. Unless it is an emergency, you are not welcome over." Teresa called me because she said I was a horrible person for turning Quinn away because she's 16 and my niece was upset. Teresa has stopped trying to do anything serious about Quinn's verbal attitude and has justified it in the past with statements along the lines of, "That's just how some teenagers are. It's a teen thing. Teenagers shouldn't be treated like young children," or "Quinn's almost an adult, it's not your place to parent her like some child." I brought up Teresa's past words and told her she is correct that Quinn is an adult who doesn't need to be scolded by me, and I have a right to protect my child from an unkind adult. Quinn is already having issues with the school emailing home or friends making excuses for why they don't want to see her, and it's time for Teresa to wake up and do something about her daughter. Teresa and I have both given our sides to mutual friends and acquaintances, and they are divided. Some are saying that Quinn's attitude is not okay, but I was wrong to turn her away at the door because she's still 16 and my niece. They said being a teenager and rapidly going from childhood to adulthood is already a rough transition. And according to Teresa, Quinn appears to be having issues at school, and I should try to have more patience with her and see what may be going on outside of home. Regardless of the reason, I feel I had to set a hard boundary with Quinn's behavior. It isn't an easy time, but at 16, you still know right from wrong, and Bella doesn't deserve to be subjected to that kind of treatment. But are my friends/acquaintances correct that I was too hard on my niece and sister and should apologize for how I responded to them? I actually kind of agree with OP's sister when they say they're almost an adult. Obviously though, by saying that, I think the sister's trying to make OP look past the issues here. But I also agree with the sentiment that it's kind of reflective of failed parenting. And when somebody is 16 years old and is treating your kid like that, it's understandable to not want them around, family or not. Val Savannah commented, "Not the jerk. Your responsibility is to your daughter to protect her. Any of your friends who would let a 16-year-old bully their 6-year-old child just because they happen to share blood is a crappy parent." If Quinn is willing to apologize to Bella and promise to only use kind words at your house, I would be willing to give her a second chance, but only if she seemed like she actually was willing to behave, and she and Bella would not be allowed to interact unsupervised for a long time. OP responded saying, "For now, I'm waiting for Quinn to be willing to give a sincere apology. Her past ones have been excuses along the lines of, Bella needs to stop acting like a baby. Bella's overreacting. It was a joke," or saying sorry in a sarcastic tone. If Quinn does give a sincere apology, then I'll welcome her back into my home. But it will take a while for her to re-earn my trust enough to be left alone with Bella. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to a help visit for my daughter-in-law and son since they won't allow me to stay in their home? My son married Sierra, fake names, and they live 2 states over. Sierra is from a culture where it's customary after she gives birth, she will not do any household chores. The family members, mostly women, will go over and do all those chores, so cooking, cleaning, shopping, etc. She explained this to me, and it happens for a few weeks after the birth. She is not close to her family, and it was asked of me to come up for a few weeks and do this. My son will be back on call a week and a half after she gives birth. She's supposed to give birth in about a month, and I was talking about logistics of the whole thing. I asked where I would sleep, and she informed me that I would need to get a hotel. This shocked me since they own a nice home. I thought it over and decided I do not want to do this. I was already going to be doing them a huge favor by being a live-in maid. I was going to use all of my PTO for this, and now I'll have to also live in a hotel. This isn't even a culture I am a part of. I informed her that I will not be able to come up for the time she wanted if I have to stay in a hotel. I am willing to come up for a weekend at most if I cannot stay in their home. I get a call back from my son and he is ticked. He told me that Sierra has been crying since and that I'm being a jerk, that I'm disrespecting her culture and rejecting her from the family, that he knows I could afford this. I could, but I don't want to pay thousands of dollars to be a maid. We got into an argument. I explained my points about it, but he wasn't having it. Am I the jerk? I can only speak from a personal level, and if it were up to me, I would say OP's not the jerk. I think it's completely fair of OP to say, if you're expecting me to come up here for a week or more and do all this caring and cleaning and taking care of all the chores, there should be an expectation that you're going to provide room and board. Even if you do have lots saved away, like OP pointed out, nobody's going to want to spend thousands of dollars to be not even a live-in maid. You pay out of your own pocket to come out of your hotel hidey hole for the day, do all the chores, and then get sent right back to the hotel. If you want to do it because it's part of your culture, great, but I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find just about anybody, even the most supportive of people, that are just willing and wanting to do that. I Am Irene commented, info, not knowing what culture you're talking about, but it would seem reasonable that if that much time and effort is expected, you would be staying with them 24/7. Is that the case with the culture you're talking about? Edited for judgment, La Cuarentena, a 40-day postpartum ritual practiced in many Latin American cultures aimed at supporting new mothers in their recovery and bonding with their babies. During this period, women are traditionally cared for by their communities, receiving assistance with household chores, cooking, and childcare. This cultural tradition is rooted in Christian customs of isolating and caring for new parents, which were once common throughout Europe and the Americas. Yeah, staying in a hotel would make that extremely difficult. If you lived nearby, it would work well, but you don't. You are not the jerk. They are expecting too much. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not prioritizing my baby after his birth? When I tell you this woman went to heck and back to deliver our child, it was apparently an easy delivery, yet it was more gruesome than my worst nightmares. I had read it all but was truly unprepared. So in the heat of the moment, I forgot to look at our baby. It may sound cruel, but I was fine with the nurse telling us that the baby is healthy. The woman I had promised to love and protect was crying, howling, looking like she was fighting death all because of me. My entire focus was on her and her doctor. My mom asked me how the baby looked when he came out. She apparently wanted to relate back to how I looked. I said I don't know, and I told her why. Apparently, I was in the wrong for that. She told my wife's mother, who echoes the sentiment. Apparently, I got the rare opportunity that most men in their era never did and screwed it up. One of the comments was passed in my wife's earshot while we thought she was asleep. She wasn't, heard it, and started crying over how I don't love our child. That I don't mind. She still zonked out on hormones and pain. Luckily, she quickly fell asleep and hasn't mentioned it since. Hoping she didn't register that interaction. But yeah, am I the jerk and a whipped husband who messed it up? First of all, I have to say I'm no expert in situations like these. I don't have a kid, I don't know what it's like to have a kid. That said, the way OP framed this, I personally completely understand where they're coming from. The baby is obviously incredibly important, but hearing the nurse say the baby is healthy, the baby is good, my attention would also probably be fixed on my life partner, who I would hope to be with me forever, who is currently going through an incredibly tough time. It doesn't mean you don't love your kid or that you don't care. It's that your priorities were in a different order and your partner, who is extremely struggling, was A1 over perfectly healthy baby, as the nurse said. Dense Passion 2729 commented, not the jerk. My husband and I had a deal that if, for any reason during the birth, medical staff walk away with the baby, he is 100% to go with the baby. I had an unplanned C-section and they took my baby away to weigh her, and he absolutely refused to go with them. I was so upset with him that was not what we agreed. He tells me she was in eyesight, he could see her, and that she was safe, and immediately brought to me, but in that moment, his concern and fear was 100% for me. Our baby was born healthy and well, and I was cut open and semi-conscious. He said he does not apologize and would do it again. He will never apologize for worrying for or protecting me. I know he approaches our baby, now toddler, with the same fierce protectiveness. It is not either or. He has enough love to go around, and I know had our baby not been 100% healthy, he would have gone with her immediately as we agreed. You can love and want to protect them both, OP. This next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to be my sister's maid of honor since I wasn't her first choice? I, 30-year-old female, come from a family of twins. My mom, 59-year-old female, was a twin. My dad's 58-year-old male father was a twin, and 4 siblings who are twins to each other. The first pair were my brothers Alan, 35-year-old male, and Adam, and the second pair were my sisters Bella, 32-year-old female, and Julia. When I was born, it was just me, and the disappointment in that was made known throughout my entire childhood. My mom prided herself on being a twin mom, and I didn't fit the aesthetic, so she didn't put that much effort into me. My siblings were constantly off doing twin things, and I was almost never included. Whenever my dad would try and get my siblings to include me, my brothers were quick to say that they were against it, while my sisters would reluctantly let me come, but made it obvious that I wasn't wanted, and had such a terrible time that I wouldn't want to come. My dad had to work a lot, so my mom was mostly in control and would almost let her twin children get their way. I was hurt so many times growing up, but by the time I was in middle school, I gave up and developed really good friendships to fill the void. Fast forward to high school, and my siblings really wanted to do an overseas trip on my parents' dime. But my father refused until Bella and Julia suggested that it would be a good way for me to finally bond with them, as they were going to go to a country I was interested in. My dad agreed under the condition that I go too, and that's when they started buttering me up and showering me with attention. It took a couple of months, but I finally was convinced that my siblings loved me, so when they mentioned the trip, I agreed. However, when we got there, they went back to their old ways and started ignoring me, and all the fun activities that were scheduled were only for 2 or 4 people due to a mistake with the booking. As the non-twin, I was the odd one out and didn't get to do anything. But since it was too late to get a refund for anything, and the return ticket had already been purchased, my parents told me to just make the best of the situation. My dad was the only one who tried to make it up to me, but I was done with my siblings after that. Fast forward to last year, and my siblings were in a bad car accident. Adam and Julia didn't make it, but I didn't feel sad about it, just in shock. Julia was supposed to be Bella's maid of honor, and she recently asked me to be her maid of honor, but I quietly refused. At first, I said I wouldn't be able to give Bella the time she needed, but her other bridesmaids said that they could pick up the slack. Bella, Alan, my mom, and a few relatives said that it would mean a lot if I could do, and eventually I just snapped and said that I knew full well Bella has never liked me and that I don't care about fostering a relationship with her now that the sister she wanted is gone. Bella and Alan were triggered by my words and were very upset with me, while my mom won't stop berating me. Am I the jerk? I think this is a very painful story. Ultimately, I think OP's not the jerk here. I just feel like they grew up with such negative experiences around these people, and it's not even like a consolation prize. It's more of a, okay, you're my last resort, will you do this for me? After everything else they experienced, I'm not surprised OP said, no way. Demented Alpaca commented, not the jerk. Seems like she picked you to foster the image of the perfect family coming together after a tragedy more than it of any desire to have you close. Besides, maid of honor is a big deal, and if you don't feel like you can do it and her justice, you shouldn't. Them pushing you till you snapped, that's on them. Our next story is, am I the jerk for acting like my boyfriend's stepsister to prove a point? My 27-year-old female, boyfriend, 26-year-old male, Matt and I have been together nearly 4 years and moved in together earlier this year. His stepsister, Clara, is currently staying with us for a few weeks on and off, and that's where the problem arises. Clara has always been a princess type. That's her thing, whatever, but it's always annoyed me how Matt reacts to it. He goes along with it completely. He is her doormat from the second she arrives until the second she leaves. I always figured that's his choice and his business, so I never said anything about it. But since she's been staying, it's really been bothering me. He carries her things like a pack mule, runs around every morning trying to get her the breakfast she wants, makes reservations at restaurants he hates just because she likes it, and gives her free use of his credit cards to buy whatever she wants. There's other things, but these are the type of things. I feel so awkward when he's fawning over her like that. I've spoken to him about how he acts around her, and his excuse is always, what am I supposed to do? That's how she is. I asked him if he doesn't find it inconsiderate and annoying, and he said no. I don't believe him. I don't believe he could not notice that the way she acts is inconsiderate. So I tried an experiment. I started acting like her. Last week, the last day she was here, I said I wanted fresh fruit for breakfast. When Matt didn't say anything, I asked if he would go get some, which he did. When we went out for lunch, I didn't even offer to pay. When we went to run errands after lunch, I made him drive 30 minutes to the next town over to go to a particular shopping center, and I took longer than usual choosing products. I also made him drive home. I could see he was a bit annoyed by me, but he didn't say anything. Later, I suggested we order takeout instead of cooking, and when he said okay, I asked to order on his app. Clara got home after we ate, and Matt spent most of the evening playing video games with her because he was clearly upset with me by this time. After she went to bed, Matt confronted me, asking if I was okay because I'd been acting odd all day. He said I'd been treating him like he works for me, which he didn't appreciate, but if I was stressed or upset, we should talk through it. I told him that I had spent one day treating him exactly how his sister does, and he hated it. So he can't say he doesn't notice how she is. Matt got mad and said that that was an insane thing to do, and he noticed because that's not my personality. He called me childish and said I'd wasted a day for nothing. It's been a few days and things have been awkward. Matt has been spending evenings gaming or with friends and has been cold to me. I don't think I did anything that bad, but my girlfriends say testing him like that was stupid when Matt treating Clara like a baby really doesn't affect me, so I should just ignore it. Now I feel bad. I don't know, I can see where people might argue, oh, OP's the one acting childish and immature, putting on this persona and kind of testing your partner without just communicating it. But I would argue that OP did try communicating that, and they feel like they got a fake answer. Honestly, I think he just kind of grew up being conditioned to do that around them. I don't know if it's easy for him just because he is so used to it just being that way, but I also feel like that's a problem on its own if he can't even realize the way he's being taken advantage of. Affectionate Low 427 commented, "Not the jerk, and I think you're underreacting, honestly. She is his age. Their parents dated for 5 years and broke up, so she's basically just an ex-stepsister. To me, it sounds more of an old family friend dynamic than a sibling dynamic. This reads like the two of you are in denial. Your boyfriend wants his stepsister. Like, I promise you this. His behavior is the whipped, I have a huge crush on a girl I haven't slept with yet, and I don't know if I ever will be able to, but God do I want to. I've seen this play out in close friendships so many times. Only time I've ever seen a man act like this, and I know so many men who have little sisters that they spoil. None act even close to this. I used to have a friend who had a relationship like you're describing, but with his biological cousin. Everyone thought it was a little strange, but was like, they're cousins, it has to be innocent. He even had a few different girlfriends over the years, but would still treat the cousin extra special. Anyway, some of his friends took his phone to look something up, and he had a bunch of cousin you-know-what in his browser history. OP responded saying they call each other step-siblings. His half-brothers call her their sister. I say stepsister because that's what he says. Even his best friends call her little sis. I don't know, I feel like jumping to it being sexual is a cheap shot. I wouldn't even know how to bring that up to him because it's gross if I'm wrong. Our next story is, am I the jerk for leaving my mom on her birthday because she wouldn't stop talking about my half-siblings? My mom turned 60 last week and I took her out to dinner to celebrate. It was her, me, 21-year-old female, my girlfriend, 22-year-old female, and my mom's best friend. I also spent most of that day with her and we went shopping, etc. During dinner, she talked about how my half-siblings should have come. I told her she had the option to invite them if she wanted them there, but I couldn't and wouldn't make contact with them. Couldn't because I have no contact info for them and we're not social media friends. Wouldn't because they've been very clear they want no contact with me. To explain why, my mom was happily married to my half-sibling's dad and they were a happy family, then he died. My half-siblings were 12 and under at the time. Mom ended up in a cycle of quick marriages that ended just as fast, and almost 5 years later, I was born from one of the failed marriages. My half-siblings didn't see me as a sibling or as a member of their family. They view me, have always viewed me, as an accident, as someone who should have never have existed. They did not want me to exist. They didn't want another reminder that their dad was gone and mom was throwing herself at all kinds of men. They wanted a neater family where all the siblings had the same two parents. Me sharing only mom was less neat. It was more complicated. I didn't have much to do with the oldest. He stopped coming around once the other two moved out of the house. But before that, he would come and he ignored me. I got used to it. The other two were close to each other, and because of the age gap too, I was the outsider. It was rough being on the outside when I was small, and mom was never very stable or steady. According to mom's best friend, the death of her husband was always going to be the death of the woman and mom she was. She loved him, and she found she never loved or found happiness after him. Each new husband was a distraction at best. The contact with my half-siblings lessened so much over time. They're not very close to mom either, but they check in on her from time to time. They speak to her occasionally. They send cards and stuff for birthdays and Christmas. For her though, and not me. I attempted to make contact when I moved out by sending a follow request on social media, but they never accepted it. That was it. So back to the birthday dinner. I had told mom ahead of time and told her if she wanted my half-siblings there, she would need to invite them herself. She didn't. Then during dinner, she kept saying how I should reach out, how we should be close, I should have invited them, and all kinds of stuff like that. I told her they wanted nothing to do with me and could she please drop it. She kept pushing, and especially on the topic of my relationship with them. We all tried to change the subject. When she wouldn't let it go, my girlfriend and I left early, without finishing, because I was done. My mom was crying down the phone to me the next day and the day after that, asking how I could leave her. Am I the jerk? So in a way, the whole situation as a whole just kind of breaks my heart a little bit. It's sad that it ended up like it did, but it is how it is, and OP was treated and still is treated the way they are. It just can't be that picture-perfect family unit that OP's mom's, for whatever reason, trying to expect. Napalm Axolotl commented, "Not the jerk. She wasn't just talking about your half-siblings, she was repeatedly pressuring you to try to get you to pressure your half-siblings into a connection. They've been clear that they don't want that, so she's welcome to talk to them about it, but she needs to stop pushing you. You didn't walk out when she started on it again. It took several times of trying to change the subject and get her to leave off the pressure. Also, it sounds like you didn't even leave her alone. She was still with her best friend. Maybe she'll learn from this, but it sounds like probably not. I'm sorry. I hope you can make your own happy family going forward." OP responded to that saying, "I don't think she will, but I'm not sure she really wants to learn from it either. As much as I try to be a good daughter, I don't think I was ever loved by her. Or at least not like she loves her first 3 children, who are the children of the man she loves. Yes, she was still with her best friend and I paid for everything still, so her best friend wouldn't have to." This next story is, am I the jerk if I asked my daughter's Deipnophobic boyfriend not to come over when we're eating? My daughter has been dating this guy a couple months. One day he was going to hang out and watch movies and have pizza. We ordered pizza, extra to ensure we had enough for him, and as soon as I got home with it, he walked out without even saying goodbye, which we thought was rude. On another occasion, we invited him to a restaurant to celebrate a special event for my daughter. He ordered food but didn't eat and spent most of the dinner in the bathroom. Finally, we spent the day out with him along and stopped for food. We were all famished. I encouraged him to order something, my treat, along with everyone else, and he refused. Then he just sat there awkwardly watching everyone eat. It made me very uncomfortable because I don't like people watching me eat. I told my daughter that I think he's been pretty rude, but she likes him, so she thinks his behavior is no big deal. A little while later, my daughter informs us that he has an issue eating in front of people. So I say, well, that's fine, but then he doesn't need to hang around at meal times because it makes me uncomfortable eating in front of someone that isn't eating with us. Now, my daughter is mad that I'm discriminating against his disability and I wouldn't treat someone else like that if they have a disability. Am I the jerk for not wanting him around at meal times? Could he be a little bit more communicative about his issues here? Sure. But am I realistically going to fault somebody who has a very legitimate phobia removing themselves by any means from a situation when said phobia is going to be triggered? I mean, how can you really blame the guy? And then all of a sudden you're starting to outcast him and paint him as this weirdo because he has a legitimate fear. 626 commented, if someone has a phobia eating in front of others but otherwise still wants to hang with the gang during meal times, forcing them out of the dinner table is unnecessarily harsh. Would you force someone away from the table if they just had dental work and can't eat? Or if there was any compelling physical reason why they wouldn't be able to join in the meal? Somehow, I doubt it. Just being uncomfortable with someone not eating at the table isn't a good enough reason to tell them to leave. That being said, if you didn't want the guy around because he'd been rude for doing things like leaving without saying goodbye the moment you came home with food, or ordering something and then not eating it, that's a different matter entirely. It low-key does sound like this guy has severe social anxiety around food and company, but he really should have let you know instead of forcing your daughter to explain it to you secondhand. He also definitely should have let you know before letting the situation devolve into scenarios you mentioned before. The walking out on the movie, ordering and then not eating, where his behavior can easily be mistaken for outright rudeness. Depending on how involved you intend to get with this guy or how serious your daughter is about the relationship, it might be worth having a conversation with him about this so you know how to proceed with him going forward. About whether or not you should offer food when he comes over, or if he even wants to be there for mealtime with the gang, without just, fully stonewalling him. Edit, need to deliver judgment since this is the top comment somehow, so freak it. Everybody sucks here. If you're going to exclude the guy from the table, don't hide it behind a flimsy reason like, him not eating makes me uncomfortable. That's what your daughter is using as ammo against you because it's BS. Just tell her that you didn't like how he acted outside of not eating, and cite how he behaved rudely in previous encounters, and that's why you don't want him at the table anymore. Phobia/disability does not give you a pass to leave without saying goodbye, or order food on someone else's dime and then not eat anything, and then spend the entire dinner in the bathroom. If you intend to build a more positive relationship with him though, it might be worth asking him if he even wants to be invited to meals to begin with, because it honestly sounds like he doesn't. Edit 2, I don't have the time to respond to 100+ comments since there's apparently an all-out war going on in these threads. So I'll just reiterate my key points. You are entitled to be comfortable eating in your own home. There is nothing stopping you from disinviting someone from the table for any reason. However, disinviting someone from the table solely because they don't or can't eat can be seen as jerkish or even discriminatory, which is why OP's daughter is crying discrimination. All of this can be fixed by just changing your reason for disinviting him to, I don't want him over at meals because he acts rudely while also not eating. Citing his silent departure at the movie/pizza incident, or his ordering at the restaurant event and then not eating, or even just his sitting around awkwardly while staring and not contributing to the social atmosphere while not eating are all valid, and shifts the blame from something passive that he shouldn't reasonably be blamed for, not eating, to something active that he can and should be held accountable for, being rude. Your daughter cannot cry discrimination because phobias, disabilities, or whatever do not give you an excuse to be actively rude and ruin everybody else's time. Alternatively, all of this can probably be fixed by just talking to him directly, which nobody seems to have done. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling a couple that I'm not their charity case? I've been raising my 8-year-old nephew Jack after both his parents died in 2019. I went from being a 34-year-old bachelor to being a single dad overnight. I don't regret it or anything, but it has and does require a lot of sacrifice. My brother made good money and invested into a house before he died. It's being rented at a loss because the rent is less than the mortgage and other costs, but it will be worth a fortune when it's paid off. So I'm basically paying for an 8-year-old in a house I don't even live in. I also have Jack in a private school. This summer, Jack wanted to go to a sleepaway camp. It's for 6 weeks and I could only afford 2, even though it's a 3-week minimum. He left last week. Out of the blue, the camp called me up and said someone wanted to sponsor Jack for the whole summer. I was confused. They said a pair of angels heard of my hardship and wanted to help out. I said I wouldn't even consider unless they told me who was paying for it. Eventually, they said it was the parents of a boy who was an acquaintance of my son. They act like they're better than everyone and have come from old money. I've heard them say nasty things about the people that they've helped. I reached out to them and said my finances are none of their business and I'm not their charity case. I'm not here to make them feel better about themselves. They were taken aback by my response and asked me to think of Jack. I said, your attitude proves my point. For the record, Jack has a fun summer planned out which includes many playdates and trips with his cousins, and his other uncle is taking him to Legoland in a couple weeks. He's not working in the mines this summer. Edit, the house was half paid off when I took possession of it. It costs me $400 a month to keep it. I would have lost like $80,000 before the mortgage is paid off, but the house can easily sell for $1 million. Why would I sell the house at a loss when I can keep it at a loss, but then sell it again in 15 years? Edit, yeah, dang right that the house is mine. Why shouldn't I be compensated for raising my nephew? So he should get his $250,000 and a house, whereas I find myself in debt at 53? He's already starting off at an advantage, and if I should die, then he would get the house or whatever I have from selling it. It's a small compensation to have saved him from going to foster care. I'm sure my brother and my nephew would want me to have the house for putting my entire life and future on hold to raise him. The second half of the story took a sharp turn out of nowhere. I never even thought about pressing the issue on who would get the proceeds of the house. That said, honestly, I feel like this is a situation where OP almost kind of chose themselves and their personal feelings more over the kid's actual experience. At the end of the day, if OP accepted that money, would what the rich parents say behind closed doors A, ever even reach the kid, and B, make a lick of difference to that kid's life? I think it would only stand to be a net positive gain for the kids, so I understand where OP's coming from, but again, they picked themselves and their own personal feelings over making a more magical experience for the kid. Iron Chef 8000 commented, I get it, I really do. Everything you said makes sense. However, the only person who loses in this scenario is your little nephew. For that, I have to say that you are kind of slightly are. That said, you're otherwise a saint for everything you're doing. Very slight, mild, softest possible, you're the jerk. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.